Okay, firstly, I want to apologize for my complete lack of experience, but welcome to my TED Talk. I honestly never thought I would be saying this and not cracking a joke, but well, here we are. Hi, I'm Brinda Sharma, an average Indian woman and an aspiring travel blogger, coming to you live from Spiti. I honestly wish I was giving this talk in person so that I would be able to interact with all of you lovely people. But this works out fine as well, because this is where I actually started my journey from, and I'm actually giving my talk, my TED Talk here. Every story has a beginning, and my beginning dates back to when I was a child and I used to travel with my parents to these hill stations across India. I grew up in a school surrounded by kids who were able to travel the world with their parents, and I was great for them. But somehow, knowing my humble beginnings and where I was coming from, I never felt like I was in a place to even dream of traveling the world. So the mountains in India were my safe place. I grew up as a very passionate kid. I was always very enamored by the outdoors. I loved being outdoors. I was always either into sports or I really liked to travel, even though it was with my parents. So when I graduated from school, I was lucky enough to get admission in a college that also had a campus in Shimla. And when I got to know that, I knew that was something I had to pursue. And honestly, that was the perfect opportunity for me to get out of my comfort zone. And I chose that campus solely with a mindset of being able to stay in the mountains, utilize that time to be independent, be on my own, and also start traveling without my parents. First 2 years of my college were not that easy. I was in an environment that was not very flexible and very open to seeing women doing unusual things, especially like traveling. And trust me, back then traveling was not normal. Hardly anyone from my college used to travel except these few guys who were already from Himachal. And it was also very difficult to convince my parents to let me go with a group of people they didn't know to a place they hadn't been to. So I spent the first 2 years of my engineering just waiting for that perfect opportunity. Cut to my 5th semester, I started to realize that time was running out, and I was closer to the mountains then than I would have ever been. And I also had like this list of places that I had to cover before my college would end. So I got together 8 people to go on this trek called Triund. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about it. So that I would be able to convince my parents to let me go and also have my college give me permission to leave. When I started the trek, I instantly felt in connection with my surroundings and with the nature. I was so happy. I felt so confident. And you know, you miss a lot of things when you're traveling with your parents, when you're just kids. And all these things were starting to come to me as soon as I started this trip. I reached the top and I instantly felt so accomplished. I was also separated from the rest of my group, so it was only me with 2 other friends of mine. 15 minutes into reaching the top, we were stuck in a hailstorm that did not end for 45 minutes, after which it started to snow. By this point, I had no idea where the rest of my group was. I was very worried for all of them. A lot of the camps that the people that were already there had set up were torn because of the hailstorm. We had nowhere to stay. The little tea stall that we had taken shelter in, the guy decided to close and head back down to Dharamshala. So we had literally nowhere to stay. And mind you, this was my first trek. This was my first trip without the blanket of protection of my parents and the planning and everything that goes behind planning a vacation that I had no idea up until this point. But the responsibility that came with this experience was definitely, I was getting a high off of. I remember then in the morning when we decided to leave very urgently because I knew the weather was going to get even worse that particular day. And we had just begun to climb down when the weather started to clear out and the clouds in front of the Dhauladars started to move away. And I had never seen such mountains before. I still don't have the words to describe the feeling I got when I saw those mountains. And that is when I knew I had to make traveling a very, very big part of my life. I loved this feeling of responsibility, this feeling of being independent, solely responsible for your own safety, and continue to chase these experiences. Now it was time for me to graduate. I was desperately trying to figure out how to travel full-time. If there was a job that would allow me to travel every month or every week for that matter. how I could convince my parents that I was so passionate about traveling, I wanted to do it full time. But honestly, I got no answers. I went nowhere with my research. This was year 2017 when we only had a handful of influencers and people were not very open about their sources of income and how they were able to travel. But nevertheless, I did not stop trying. I did not stop contacting people on Instagram and on multiple websites. And this is when I got in touch with this star photographer, Anune, who I began talking on Instagram and somehow convinced him to take me on this trip to Spiti that he was planning that winter. I was so desperate to reach the mountains, I basically agreed to go with 5 complete strangers to a minus 25 degree no network Spiti. And since this year I had graduated and I was not working, I was still trying to figure out stuff. Anunay was generous enough to sponsor the trip for me because I literally had no money, as long as I was able to help him out with his work. Since he was already an influencer back then, he did have a couple of collaborations that he wanted help with. While I was on this trip, while I was working with him, I saw this whole new world of careers, this whole new world of being influencers and actually traveling full time. And honestly, I knew then this is something I had to explore. I continued to work with Anunay since that trip to Spiti. I began doing social media management for a couple of clients that we had back then. And with the money that we earned, we took a couple of trips across India. We then decided to move to Dubai to expand this list of clients that we had. And you're probably wondering, why Dubai? No taxes, better work culture, and closer to the rest of the world. I moved to Dubai in March 2018. And I know you're probably wondering, this was too soon, right? That's what honestly I felt as well. But this was a risk that I decided to take for myself, because I was honestly not able to see anything that was happening for myself back in India. For the next 2 to 3 months, I continued to work freelance on social media management and travel as well. And if this sounds perfect, it wasn't. I gradually learned that I was not too comfortable traveling and working because I was not okay with the fact that something was interrupting my trips. And I was somehow not about this kind of life, about this uncertainty of how much money I'm going to be making the next month, or if a client would stay on the next month or not. And I wanted some stability in my sources of income. So I decided to start looking for a job. 2 months of countless interviews and a lot of hard work, I finally landed a job with GSK and started working in August 2018. And I remember thinking to myself back then, oh, it's okay. I have responsibilities. I have bills to pay. It's okay if, even if I'm able to travel once a year, it's fine. At least I'll be able to do something. At least I'll be able to travel once. It's fine. And I remember thinking all this with a very heavy heart, because this was obviously not something I was looking forward to do. While on the job, I tried to hack my way into maximizing the amount of travel that I was able to do with the amount of leaves that I was given in a year. And as soon as my probation period ended, which was for about 6 months, we started traveling in Feb in 2019 and ended up traveling to 12 countries that year. We did not miss one long weekend. Every public holiday we combined with our annual leaves and honestly just left. We prioritized traveling that year to the max, so much so that I gave up spending time with my family, meeting my friends, or anything else that honestly that I like doing, because traveling was the only thing that was on my mind that year. We were working full-time jobs, traveling the world, and trying to grow our Instagram accounts to now 300 and 400k followers. And this way, we also were able to establish multiple sources of income for ourselves. I've obviously missed out on a lot of important information here, so let's get into it. Why did I decide to not travel full-time? I had responsibilities, I also had bills to pay, and uncertainty was something I have never honestly looked forward to. Back then, since being influencers was not that popular, I had no idea how to start and how brand collaborations work or how you can actually earn through Instagram. So I decided to work on this on the side till the time I figure stuff out for myself. And my parents did not approve of traveling full-time at all. How did we end up traveling so much with full-time jobs? I'm asked this question all the time on Instagram on how I'm able to manage a 9 to 5 job with traveling this much. And honestly, where there is a will, there is a way is always my answer. 2019 was a year where I prioritized myself. When my work started to get noticed on Instagram, that's when things started to pick up. I started receiving collaborations from brands, and that is when I fully understood how you could actually travel full time and how you don't need to be working freelance in order to travel. I now have enough experience with traveling and blogging that I no longer require my 9 to 5 job. Now let's talk about what you guys can learn from my story. Number 1, try to have or develop a sellable skill. This will help you figure out how you can earn on the side and also not be location dependent. Number 2, be patient and be passionate. We often forget the things that we really like to do or the things that we're passionate about when we are so busy trying to build a life for ourselves. It is very important to have something that you're truly passionate about, because this definitely helps you stay motivated no matter what you're doing. If you're not able to do what you love doing now, you will in the future. So figure out ways you can start achieving it and work towards it. Keep small goals for yourself and timelines that you want to achieve those goals by, and start working towards those goals. Number 3, start prioritizing your life. 2019 for me was self-care 101, because I treated my job as my job and tried very, very hard not to confuse my personal and my work life. While I worked towards building a career for myself, I did not forget what I was passionate about. Let's start normalizing not killing ourselves for a job. Let's start normalizing and prioritizing taking all our leaves, and let's start prioritizing ourselves. And lastly, I know this one will be a little cheesy, but if you love something purely enough, things will definitely fall into place. All you need to do is be passionate and be ready to take the risks for yourself, because zindagi na milegi dobara. Thank you everyone for listening to my talk. Hope I have been able to inspire you to build your own path, be passionate, take risks, and not go after having a normal life.